Beta Mahatvaraj, what a pleasure and what an honor for you to come on the Weekend Aquarist. I'm so glad that you could you accepted the invite and you accepted the invite right away. I'm so happy that you could do that, and I had to wait because you were traveling all over, and I've been tracking you with your Instagram posts, and I was like, okay, now he's over here, now he's over there. Okay, when is he going to be back? Okay, so I was looking
So,
forward to
so
that.
just a warning, Amar, that's not in chronological order. So some place that I went a year back might suddenly appear on, Insta just because, I was scrolling through my phone and found something that I can post. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right because I was wondering he was supposed to be in Shillong. I where is this coming from? But you're right. So for the audience, today we have with us Beta Mahatvaraj, who's a passionate aquarium enthusiast, more so a conservationist and subject matter expert on Indian native fish. Beta has decades of experience in the hobby. He's had decades of experience going out into the wild, especially into the Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, and documenting our Indian native fishes, and he's written many publications on that. He's gone on scientific expeditions, and he's somebody that a lot of hobbies look up to, and he's got his name in the scientific community as well. And I'm going to give a little background, or probably I'm going to ask Vita only to talk about himself. But many of you know him as Meenkaran, and
Yeah.
he's on Instagram, on YouTube as Meenkaran. He's got a fan following. He's got a fan following for his photographs and the videos that he puts in. Really awesome underwater video reels and all. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to request Beta. Why don't you introduce yourself for the audience? Just before you do that, they know you as Beta Mahatvaraj, they know you as Meenkaran. What I'd be interested in knowing is what brought Beta into this hobby, pulled him into native fish, and what makes Beta tick. Okay, so let's hear from you.
Yeah. So I've been a Meenkaran for most of my life, right? That's how I would introduce myself. Uh, So I think okay, I'll have to first explain what Meenkaran is, right? So
Yeah,
so
yeah, that will help.
I'm from Tamil Nadu. So Meen means fish. So Meenkaran means basically a fisherman, and I think that is very it's kind of the best way to describe me. So but then I started my passion at a very young age. So we used to live in a place called Palarivattam in Ernakulam. That's in current day Kochi in Kerala, right? So my
Right.
father used to work there, and we used to live in a very quite a large compound where we were kind of a tenant there, and we used to have a stream running through our compound.
Uh-huh.
And I remember at a very young age, and I think I don't want to disclose the year because people are going to think I'm a dinosaur. Uh, just let me say, long, long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah.
And so I remember we used to, once I got back from school, the most of the kids there were older to me. So we used to go and catch fishes from that stream and put it in a bucket, or we used to have a kind of like a cement tank where we used to put the fishes. And I
Hmm.
can't really recall what fish we caught, except that I know that a couple of those were catfish because I remember the whiskers. But that's when I started, kind of kindle my passion, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
I would say it's an exposure to nature at a very young age. But then we moved around after that. So we went to Madurai and then again, okay, now I'll have to disclose the year 1987 that we came back to Chennai,
Okay.
after kind of visiting quite a few places in South India, right? Living in different parts. And then, I finally had the chance to have an aquarium of my own. So I have an elder brother who is, 4 years elder to me, who is also interested in fishes. So that helped a lot. So we had our first tank, and I think the first fishes we had were tiger barb. I remember my uncle got me a pair of tiger barb. That was the first set of fishes. And then, I think it's the story of every hobbyist, right? Or a, long time hobbyist, that you
Hmm.
start with, a certain set of the bread and butter fish or the common fishes. And then you have that whole keeping fighters, you keep goldfish, the different sort of fish. But I think it was in the, I think early 90s, or rather, when I actually started keeping some native fish that I recognized as native fish. So I have kept native fish, but I
Hmm.
never knew
Hmm.
that they were from our own country or my surrounding. But I think the early 90s was when my parents were a little comfortable with me roaming around a bit, right? So I used to go to nearby ponds along with friend to catch fishes. And I remember we used to catch these, the snakers at the time, right? We
Chanas.
don't find that anymore. Yeah, chanas,
Uh,
right? So we used to catch those. We used to catch some, the feral guppies that you have. That was my first exposure to, native fishes, right? But
okay.
I think it was towards the late 90s that I actually made a visit to a Eastern Ghats stream, which is like probably a 2 hour journey from my home in Chennai. So that is on the Andhra Chennai border.
Okay.
And that's when I was like really blown away, because that was
Hmm.
my first exposure to a hill stream, and my love for hill streams and hill stream fishes started at that point.
Okay.
This is basically a waterfall. Right now, I mean, I've been there a year back. It's like around 25 years later, and it has been transformed more into a picnic spot. Right, it is whole change. But then when we went, usually we were the only ones there. It used to be the water used to be crystal clear. It is still crystal clear, but there is no signs of any human intervention at that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then that's when I fell in love with, I would say, hillstream fishes or native fishes and exploring our habitat. Because till then, I never thought, I always thought, okay, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, Amazon
Uh,
River, those are the places to be. Those are
uh,
still in my bucket list, but I was thinking that those are the heaven kind of a thing. But I think from that point on, we started, kind of traveling. And I think a very important aspect of that, which kindled, was also that there was a partnership between, Chennai hobbyist and the Bangalore hobbyist.
okay.
So some of the, the legendary hobbyists, Madan and all that, and, Ravi from Chennai. So we all, started getting together, and we started going to the Western Ghats. That is again a totally different experience from Eastern Ghats to Western Ghats, because
Hmm.
Eastern Ghats, beautiful streams, but the diversity was a little limited, right? The
Hmm. Hmm.
biodiversity.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But the Western Ghats, the biodiversity was, I mean, simply amazing, right?
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think from the early 2000 is when we started going to the Western Ghats. At that point, as larger groups, because we are a set of people from Chennai, we're a set of people from Bangalore, we kind of used to kind of plan trips where we go, which place do we visit, which fish do we target, and so on, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, Beta, because you spoke about this collaboration and going out with this fellow hobbyists and all, and they're all legends. Yeah, going together to Eastern Ghats to Western Ghats, what was it about the Western Ghats? You touched upon it, that had more diversity and all. Can you tell us more about it, because not many listeners, not many viewers would be really aware as the rich biodiversity the Western Ghats actually have. Not many are aware that the Western Ghats, traverse the entire distance across 4 states. So you might want to kind of touch upon that as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a good way of explaining it, because unless you visit, it's kind of a different kind of experience, because Eastern Ghats, very beautiful, beautiful streams, clear waters, a lot of fishes, but it's not very diverse. I guess it will be the difference between a place like Mumbai, right, which is like a boiling pot of culture. So you have people from every different state, right? So I know how to kind of put it in a Western Ghats scenario, right? You have a lot of diversity. You have different type of bottom dwelling fishes. You have different type of, you know, uh, mid-level fishes. You have different type of, fishes which swim at the surface. You have fishes which live closer to the bank, which don't like high flow but are still in streams. But then you also have fishes which live on, the most, the torrential part of the stream, right, where the water flow is very high, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it is more diverse. I think it is not just in terms of fish, even in terms of reptiles or birds. I would think that
Absolutely.
you'll see that the diversity is more, right? That's why I
Absolutely.
think it's considered a biodiversity hotspot.
Right. Right.
Right?
And they keep discovering new species now and then, and that's a tell us some of the scientific expeditions you've been part of. We'd like to
Mm.
hear about that as well.
I think the latest one that we did was on the Perigar Tiger Reserve.
Hmm.
So we did a survey with the Forest Department, Kerala Forest Department, and there's a lot of volunteers as well as scientists from the ichthyology field.
Hmm.
I think that was a great experience because Periyar Tiger Reserve in Kerala has a very high level of endemicity, which means that fish that are found there are not found in other river systems and so on. So one of the I think very unique fish that we found there was a fish called Lepidopygopsis typus. I don't remember what that common name for that fish is.
Hmm.
But it's a very unique fish because it is a mid-level swimmer,
Hmm.
but it neither looks like a barb nor like a beryllius.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a mix of different species, and
Hmm.
it's a fish that I wanted to see for a very long time because it's kind of in a way it's a legendary fish.
Hmm.
But then I got to see that when we went for the trip. So the happy part is that, or the good part is that the population was pretty,
Strong.
good there. Yeah, pretty good there. I think the reason is that this is at a quite high altitude.
Hmm.
So usually there's not much, obviously, human intervention there. And the invasive fishes that are found in the
Lower
lower
parts.
altitudes are
Yeah,
not there, right?
that's
So
good.
this
Yeah.
population for now seems to be quite safe. So,
And this would be
hopefully,
protected jungle, right? So this
yeah, this
is
is
core
a
area.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
the
yeah.
core
So this is
area.
a core area. So
Yeah.
during that survey, there are potentially 3 to 5 species that are new fishes, not found by me, but
Mm.
from we all went to different parts. I went to one part where Lepidopygopsis is found. There are other people surveying different parts of Periyar Tiger Reserve. So
Mm. Mm.
there are around 3 to 5 that are found. So they're
Mm.
not been published yet, but once we do the DNA analysis and all that, we'll know whether they're actually new
Right.
species.
Right. So
So
talking, speaking with you, one gets the feeling that one is speaking to a scientist, one is speaking to an ichthyologist. Uh, Not many people know what your
I,
background is. So, let's touch
yeah,
upon
yeah.
that.
I neither of that. I'm neither an archaeologist or anything like that. So, I've been in the IT field for the last, what is this, 24 years. So I started working in the IT field in 2000. So I've been in the IT field all along. But this has always been my passion. So any break I could get, I would go to the Western Ghats, right? So that's how it started, and over time, it has become a part of me that that is part of my life to explore and document. Probably that would be the legacy I leave behind. To kind of document this species, right? So
Right.
yeah, nothing to do with. I mean, my profession has nothing to do with fishes. But then I see a lot of people when I travel who are people like me. I know doctors who are very
Yeah.
knowledgeable
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
fishes and
Yeah.
other birds and so on.
Right.
So I think
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think all of us in a way are weekend aquarists. Okay, we
that's true.
so we are all in your corporate world, or you're doing different vocations, and then you're pulled into this beautiful hobby, and then it kind of just grows on you, and
Right,
then we cross over from just the hobby to conservation. We cross over to educating others. uh, I think the real threat nowadays, like you touched upon, is the invasive species that people just out of curiosity, they'll take a small red tail catfish because it looks cute, and
right,
that fellow grows for a couple of feet long, probably a meter long, and they then don't know what to do with it. So first they'll dump it in a well, and then probably then dump it in the nearby lake, and then that's where everything goes for a toss. Chennai,
right.
especially, I'm aware that is also Kolathur, the hub, and all. And when the floods came in, a lot of those fish escaped also, and so
Yeah,
you have that. So, can you share some thoughts around that?
there are, I mean, in terms of threats, invasives definitely is a big threat. And one of the reasons is that a lot of times you don't have it is difficult to control them. Like if you consider a fish like tilapia or our, suckermouth catfish, the plecos, right? They are very adaptable. They reproduce fast. I mean, they can survive in most conditions, right? And it's very difficult to put a border saying that okay, this is a reserve forest, you cannot come in, right? So invasive fishes, wherever there is water connectivity, they can go, right? So that's the problem.
Hmm.
Places like Chennai, we've been doing some surveys of lakes. I mean, we did one of the lakes here called Koratur Lake as well. So, I mean, I was expecting to see tilapia, right? And we did find a lot of tilapia. We also found plecos, but surprisingly, we found, the Midas cichlid, or what you call sometimes call as the red devil cichlid, right? So probably a hybrid, and flower horns, right? Both of these were found both, when we did the survey, both in the fisherman's catch as well as when we tried doing a netting around the banks as well. So that is quite surprising. Probably, as you said, there are a lot of farms or basically pond culture of aquarium fishes. Probably these escape from that, or it could even be intentionally released by hobbyists as well, where we don't know. But it's quite alarming. The amount of invasive species that are there. It's quite a bit. So, I mean, both is there, right? So there are a set of fishes that were released as food fishes like tilapia, the African catfish. That's one set. There are a set of fishes which were released for mosquito control, such as the gambusi, or the what we call the guppies commonly, and as well as some more live bearers. And on the other hand, you have the aquarium fishes which are in the water bodies, right? But majorly, I think the threats are, I've seen that, clarias, which is the African catfish. That's a major threat, because they're quite predatory as well, right? So that and the plecos as well. Both of those breed at an alarming rate, right? And also the problem is they are not very popular food fishes. Clarias was, but I don't think there's a lot of interest in that fish though, right? As a food fish, probably due to the taste. Tilapia is preferred. So the risk is that if something like a pleco, it's never going to be harvested as a food fish because
Right.
with so much of that armor and all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I doubt it's. People are thinking of different ways. I think I read somewhere that they're trying to produce pet food with the plecos. Uh, but I mean, it definitely it's going not going to be as popular as eating a tilapia, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
so that definitely is a concern.
Yeah. So.
But these are not the only things, right? The
Mm.
invasive, from my experience, going to the Western Ghats for the last 20 odd years, what I've noticed is that there are some practices which have an impact, but are not destructive in a wide scale. Like, for example, dynamite fishing is something that I've seen. So fishermen basically throw a dynamite into the water. There's a blast, and it kind of knocks out all the fish in that area. All right. So it's not a very large area, but around a small perimeter, everything's knocked out. It is a serious issue, but then it is very localized. But what I've seen is more concerning is sand mining, right? Almost every river that you go and see, sand mining is prevalent. So which means that especially fishes which are depend on the bottom, right? Bottom feeders, like fishes like loaches and so on, their whole ecosystem is destroyed because when you remove the gravel,
Yeah.
right? When you remove the sand, it's basically a silt that's deposited there, or it's like a fine dust that's there. A lot of the the ill-stream fishes and the loaches, the bottom dwellers cannot thrive in that kind of an environment, right? So that is definitely a impact. We've also seen wherever there have been in quotes development, right, in terms of bridges, dams, and so on. Again, you'll see that maybe the fishes are there. I'm not sure, but I've definitely seen either a drop in the amount of fishes that are there or the biodiversity, or I mean, in a recent case, we wanted to look for a small goby. It's called red neck goby. It's in Karnataka. So we have caught that before a few years back, but we went to the same location. But that area has been kind of destroyed because there is some bridge construction happening there, a couple of bridges happening there. So it's all either bulldozed or there's a lot of this fish specifically lives on the sandy banks. Now, all these sandy banks with gravel has kind of been destroyed because there's been like bulldozers all over, right? So these are all micro habitat fishes. So they cannot survive, even a little out of the habitat because they are depend on burying under the sand when there is a threat, right? So they cannot live, say, close to the middle of the river, for example, or the stream. Their micro habitat is living towards the banks. So things like this, cause a lot of damage. But the pity is that you won't even know that they've disappeared because you need to first know that there was this fish
They
or
were
there
there in the
to
first
know.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's the pity of fishes, right? Because they are living underwater. For most people, it's not visible because whatever is caught as food fish is typically, say, a minimum of say 3 to 4 inches size,
Right.
right?
Right.
So a lot of these small fishes like
Don't
loaches
matter.
and small gobies, I mean, probably somebody in their livelihood, even if they live near a stream or river, would have never seen it because even the catch that's caught for food is going to be a different set of fishes, probably the larger fishes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
So is
that's
it?
why I think the fish conservation is very, very important.
So what is the government doing about it? Is there Are there any steps, or where when it comes to the infrastructure, growth of infrastructure, all of this is taking a backseat? Isn't these clearances are given, and also what's your experience been? What have you observed?
So I'm really not sure. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, what is happening, right? I know concerns of, let's say, the larger mammals, right? So if there's a tiger in that area or there's a tiger reserve, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of noise raised.
Right.
But in terms of other fishes, I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of things like fishes, I don't know if there's enough hue and cry raised when some development work is happening, right? Some
Right.
most times you're not even aware. I mean, go to a location that's been in Coorg as well. There's a beautiful location, Madikeri, which used to have very beautiful barbs. Even that, there's a bridge constructed, and the whole place has changed, right? So you'll never realize it because you don't live there. So me as a kind of like a visitor, right? I might only visited the same spot once in 4 years, for example, right? Because you're always looking at new areas, so you'll never realize what is happening. There is conservation work happening for marshes. I know there is a focus on Denisonia as well. But as a whole, for other species, how much of sensitivity is there, especially for riverine projects, infrastructure projects, I'm really not sure. Probably I'm not the expert to comment on it.
Yeah.
Uh, But I'm not sure if there's enough being done on that
Yeah.
area,
So
going by
I
what
think,
I'm seeing.
this is something that I, see and hear world over. It's nothing specific to India as such. It's a global
Right.
issue. Even if you speak to Heiko Bleher or, Mikolji, and they'll all talk about how, the advance of humans into the forest is kind of slowly but surely kind of killing all of these. So many species are disappearing, and that is where the importance of the hobby as well comes into play, because you you identify the species, you bring the species to the hobby, at least it has a better chance of surviving.
Right.
Otherwise, very soon, I don't know whether in the next 20-25 years are we really going to have any forest at all, or are we only going to go and say that, okay, there's Beta Mahatvaraj and he's got all the species, you could go and see his house, and it's got all the tanks and all of that. And that's the that's the, I would say, that's one side of our hobby which is also making a difference, and I think we should continue
Mm.
educating the youngsters on conservation and how they can play a role. Let's talk a little bit about your favorite native species. I must pause a moment over here just to let the audience
Mm.
know that Beta, when he's documenting these pictures, if you have not been following it, please follow his YouTube channel, his Insta channel. He's very active over there. He keeps posting these photographs, he keeps posting these underwater reels, and he's very generous. I requested him for use in the Weekend Aquarist magazine and the newsletters, and he's opened that, and he's contributing to the articles as well. So Beta, talk about your favorite fishes. I do know that you keep posting some of those, again and again,
Mm.
but let's
Mm.
hear it from you.
I love to talk about that fish, definitely. So I'm a hill stream fish lover because it the adaptations of hill stream fishes amazes me, right? Because there are sometimes when you go into the hill stream and you cannot stand because the water is so flowing so fast. And in that area, there are fishes which have adapted to stay in the same spot, right? So definitely there's a fish called Bhavani australis that's found in Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, part of the Western Ghats. That's definitely my favorite fish. Uh, Unfortunately, it also torments me. It's a fish that torments me because I've been keeping that fish for a very long time, hoping to breed it. In fact, I have a dedicated 5 foot tank for it with fans, to keep the water cool and make sure that they have a very good mix of food and all that. But I haven't still been able to breed them, unfortunately. So maybe they think that I will lose interest in them if they breed or something like that. Yeah, but so that's a beautiful fish. So
And
I
this
mean,
tank of
that's
yours,
one.
you have,
Uh,
if I remember, this tank of yours, you have replicated their fast flowing stream also in that.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, right, yeah. So, uh, I mean, what is amazing about the fish is that one, there's a lot of difference in pattern. So it's kind of like a leopard-like pattern that they have.
Mm, mm.
The can hardly find two Bavani australis which have the
Similar.
same pattern.
Mm,
Right on the fins, it's almost the same,
mm,
but on the body where the spots are keeps changing, and they go undergo a complete transformation from when it's a juvenile to an adult. It is like from an ugly duckling to a handsome, handsome prince. It has to be seen to be believed because when it's small, it is gray with dark gray pattern, and when it's an adult, it is like yellow, red, with that dark pattern. So I know I'm describing it in a way, but then Amar, as we discussed, we'll add some clips to
yeah.
keep our
Yeah.
viewers,
Yeah. They
and
will.
see if
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
the same, they feel about
Yeah.
the fish the same way, right?
Right now, they're visualizing
Very,
along with you.
yeah, yeah, and it is adapted to that, the fast flowing streams because it has those. large fins. It has got that, I don't know if it's called aerodynamic body or something like that.
Yes.
It's almost like a submarine in a way, right?
Right. Right.
So that's definitely my favorite fish, and it's a challenging fish as well because they don't do well if they don't have fast flowing water, if the water temperature is high, if they don't have good algae, slime algae for them to feed on. So it's quite a challenging fish as well. So that's as I said, my favorite fish. But there are a few others. I love snakeheads. And I've kept probably the most popular one, Barca, in the past. That is a magnificent fish. Canaris is definitely the Roman numeral cichlid. So there are only three native cichlids in India. That's one of them, and that's the only cichlid that is endemic to the Western Ghats and India as well.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that's another beautiful one. So I'm actually planning to revisit their habitat sometime this year to hopefully photograph them underwater. I have a lot of photographs of them, but I've never been able to photograph them underwater because
Okay.
either I didn't have the equipment or the water was too kind of murky at that time to photograph them. So
Okay.
hopefully this year I'm planning to kind of photograph them underwater, and hopefully our viewers can also see them
Right.
how they live underwater.
So far you've only named me three of your favorite species, and I know that you've got lots more in your pocket because your photographs talk about itself. Let's talk about the Dawkinses and all. So let's
Yeah.
hear from you on that.
Yeah, so even in that group, I have my favorites. So among Dawkinsia, there is one called Exclamatio. So has kind of an exclamation mark on its body. It's
Right.
from Kallada River in Kerala.
Right. Right.
Somehow that's the one Dawkinsia which has not been in the hobby for some reason. I mean, it was in the hobby in the past, but then it has kind of disappeared and it is not in the trade anymore. So that's a very interesting species. So I went with my friend Rahul probably early last year to go and visit them in their habitat. So that was quite an experience. There's another Dawkins here called Rohanai, called Rohan Ba as well. And that's from my hometown,
Mhm.
this Nagarkoil. So again, I kind of did a pilgrimage to see them as well. So that is quite an experience. So among these, the bars, I think those are the my favorites. But believe me that if I start talking about favorites, then that's
They'll
one
feel bad,
whole,
huh?
yeah, because I have favorites from Western Ghats, I have favorites from Eastern Ghats, I have favorites from Northeast,
Right.
right?
Talk
Um,
about
so
Northeast for some time. I understand you've just come back from Shillong and Meghalaya. So just tell us
yeah,
about that trip also.
so that visit was a family vacation,
Mhm.
right? So nothing to do with fishes. But then, as always, when you look at water, I'll try and peek and see what is there. So probably sometime I need to do a dedicated trip. Yeah, but I mean, you can see the potential. Some of the most beautiful fishes are from the northeast part of India. There's a huge biodiversity, like how we have in Western Ghats. There's a huge diversity in the Northeast as well. I mean, I just visited Meghalaya. I think I saw, crystal clear water. I mean, a lot of beautiful. I mean, somebody who's interested in aquascaping, I'm not one of them. I keep fishes and then I have some plants to keep them company. But somebody who's interested in terrariums and aquascaping, I definitely need to go to the Northeast because I mean, the nature has done so many beautiful scapes for every different competition that you want, right? So you will
Right.
get a lot of inspiration. A lot of mosses are there, a lot of aquatic plants. I mean, I just visited at a very small part, and most of these were touristy places because I was with my kids. But then even in that, I could get a very good idea of the diversity. So
Right.
probably
Right.
sometime in the future, I will,
Right.
try and go again.
Right.
Only problem is when you go from Chennai to, some place like Meghalaya, and me being from Chennai and going to Meghalaya, which is pretty cold, uh, it was like, Okay, like a extreme fish that is trying to live in Chennai, right? It's just the opposite.
Right.
It is a bit cold for me, and I was very reluctant to put my hand or feet into the water. That is something that I need to work on
Right.
because I've lived so much, I mean, my entire life in pretty warm parts that the cold water scares me. I think the coldest water that I've got into is in places like Coorg and so on. This is pretty scary. Yeah.
What were some of the memorable moments that you've had going into the wild in the forest? Anything that stands out, apart from the beaches?
Yeah, leeches is always there. We are quite used to it. I think it's like a mandatory sacrifice that you have to do, that you donate some blood to the Western Ghats if you want to go and look at the fishes. But I'm planning to get a good leaf sock that's gonna help me manage that problem because I'm a little too old to donate blood. I think next time around I'm gonna do that. But yeah, memorable. When you go into nature, obviously there is. I mean, you just don't meet fishes. You meet snakes. Sometimes there is a snake, swimming close to you, and you're very engrossed in looking, snorkeling and looking at the fishes underwater. But next time I'm gonna be brave enough to photograph a, snake underwater. That's what I've been thinking that I'm not
Right.
gonna panic. Uh, I think even in the the PTR survey that we did, we had a long trek. I guess it was around a 13-kilometer trek to the to our base camp, and we came to face to face with a bison.
Uh-huh.
Uh, right. So typically, in most parts of Western Ghats that we go to, usually the warnings are for elephants. But this is the first time that we came across a bison, and I decided that we had good intentions and left us alone. But that is quite memorable. Well, I think almost all the trips, when you put your head underwater, when I say put underwater, I snorkel, you go to a different world, right? So,
Right.
I enjoy each experience, right? Every time I put my head down, it's like I'm transported to a different world.
Right.
All the worries from work and everything is kind of forgotten, and it's only on the fishes for that, 15 minutes or so that, you
All
can
the
stay.
coding goes in the water.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
flowing away.
All the burden is kept on the banks, and then you
Yeah.
get it.
So tell me, tell us about your, equipment that you carry. We see a lot of underwater reels that you do. What is the equipment that you have? What are some of the cameras that you have, or do tell us about that as well.
Yeah, so most of the videos I've been doing with GoPro, um, but I right now I've moved to another one called Insta Pro. Uh, Reason being, low light. GoPro doesn't do too well on low light,
Okay.
and most of the times you don't have a video light, so it's kind of not too great, especially when you are shooting a little early in the morning or kind of towards the evening, right? So, I'm testing out this new equipment is Pro 2.
Hmm.
But otherwise, for photography, I use a Sony.
Hmm.
So I use a Sony A6 400 or A7 IV, and the underwater housing that I use is from Sea Frogs.
Okay.
That's the underwater housing that I use. Um, Recently, I've been also using my iPhone. Like Meghalaya, I didn't take any equipment because I wasn't planning to
Hmm.
do a lot of fish related things. So I just used my iPhone for that. I know it's too expensive phone to dip it in the water, but I kind of took the risk. I wouldn't recommend it, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to pay anyone who takes,
My
follows
address.
my example and tries to dunk their iPhone.
Yeah.
Or any other phone. I think Samsung also has some level of waterproof as well. Yeah,
Uh,
this is the equipment that I carry, but there's a lot of peripheral equipment that is there. So every time you go, you need tripod, you need your snorkel, you need, if you're bringing back something, you need breather bags. Um, there's so much of charging equipment that you need to carry, the batteries, and you need to carry a flash. I also carry what you call a photo tank, right? It's basically a small tank that you can carry to
Yeah.
wherever you're going and put the fish in that and photograph,
Right.
especially when you want to kind of release it back immediately,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So this is the equipment, but photography, I've been constantly kind of trying to upgrade, but then the underwater, I mean, if you're into photography, which is an expensive hobby, underwater photography is a even more expensive hobby. The
Right.
lights, the equipment, everything is extremely expensive. So unless somebody rich adopts me or, I mean,
Sponsors on that.
some sponsors on that, then I'm going to stick with my basic equipment. Because these have their disadvantages. Like for example, if you're using any of the action cameras like GoPro or Ace Pro, you have around 1.5 feet minimum focusing distance, which means that you can't take a close up of that fish you want with these cameras,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, GoPro does have a macro lens in their most recent version. Obviously, I've not tested that. Um, but then it's still not close enough. So that's what you can do with your, your mirrorless camera. I use a mirrorless camera for underwater. So when
Mm-hmm.
I need to take a close-up video, I use the mirrorless. But then
Mm-hmm.
even in that, you need really powerful lights to penetrate the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's always a trade-off between getting a video versus how much you can light it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the comfort level because your GoPro is a very small piece of equipment,
Mm-hmm.
while your camera with your underwater housing becomes like you are carrying a gift box around,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big thing in your hand,
Right.
and especially you have with the cheaper ones like the one that I use, you have a buoyancy problem, right? So basically, it doesn't sink. The underwater housing tends to float,
Yeah.
so it has a positive buoyancy. So it's like you need to hold on tight to
Yeah.
it to make sure that you're able to
Focus properly. Yeah. Yeah.
photograph it. Yeah.
Right. So did you learn photography on your own, or did you undergo some course?
Incidentally, so I did a visual communication course as part of my
Mm.
undergraduation. So photography was part of my curriculum. I did photography at that point.
Mm.
Um, but fish photography is totally different, right? If you consider that you are photographing a fish in an aquarium, one you have a layer of glass.
Mm.
I mean, if you consider the fish as a subject, you have a layer of glass,
Mm.
you have a layer of water, and then you have the fish,
Mm.
right? So you have to shoot across those three,
Mm.
rather those two layers to get to that
Mm.
fish, right?
Mm.
So it's very different.
Mm.
So it took me a lot of bad photos to start getting ones which I can be proud of and
Mm. Mm.
actually put it up,
Mm.
right? Probably it was like close to 1%, and probably it's around 20% right now. Usable photos, right? Usually because it takes a lot of time for the fish to get used to having, staying in front of the aquarium, for example, because in here a 5 foot tank, and most of my tanks are not scaped, but they have a lot of hardware, right? In terms of hardscape, in terms of wood and all
Mm.
that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if they're not comfortable, they're gonna
Yeah.
go and hide, right?
Right. Right.
So that's there. And there is, as the tanks grow older, you have a lot of scratches on the glass. Sometimes there is glare because in my fish room, I have glass on all four sides,
Mm.
being
Mm.
aquariums on all four sides, right? So there's a lot of glare. So all those challenges are there, but I mean, a lot of it is photography is basically good lighting for fishes, I would say,
Mm.
and also anticipating how they move in terms of behavior. Like a
Right.
shoaling fish usually has a pattern in how they swim,
Mm.
right? And it's kind of repeats, right?
Mm.
Similarly, something like a snakehead you're trying to
Mm.
photograph.
Mm.
Once it's eaten its fill, it's not going to come out and pose for you,
Mm.
right? So probably either you need to entice it with food, or you just need to make sure that he has an empty stomach, so he'll come out
Right.
and pose for you, right? Because a lot of the fishes that I keep are not. very camera savvy, right?
mm, mm,
Rather
mm,
they'll want to hide for most of the day. The hill stream
mm,
fishes usually hide under rocks and
mm,
stuff.
mm.
Like,
So let's talk about quickly about your fish room, also, Vita. How many fish tanks do you currently have?
so I think I built a fish room again around 20 years back, uh, or more than 20 years. Yeah. I mean, like all projects, it started off very basic that I'm just going to have, uh, some cement, concrete blocks, and I'll have some tanks on that. But then it became quite ambitious because at that time I used to keep both native fishes and a lot of South American fishes. Actually, I
Mm,
think I
mm,
was in
mm,
that phase. So I used to have discus on one side and then native fish on the other side. But then this was a very dangerous combination because you had fishes from the wild and it
yeah.
is mixed with a lot of domestic fishes, and disease control was a big problem because the water change was all automated,
Mm,
so
mm,
all the tanks shared plumbing and all that, right? So actually ended up redoing. So I think the initial set of tanks I probably had I think around 24 tanks in the fish room, right? So then when I got pretty deep into native fishes. I kind of changed the setup, and I think right now I think 16 tanks in the fish room.
mhm.
So right now I have fewer smaller tanks and more larger tanks. So I did away with the small, that you remember the discus breeding tank, small
Yeah,
cubes that we used to
yeah,
have,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
now I have larger tanks. Mostly it is dedicated to hill stream fishes, barbs. I have one brackish one for the mud skippers.
Mm,
Um, also have one tank with for exotic. So I have because of my interest in hill stream fishes, I still have one exotic tank in there with Indonesian hill stream gobies
mm,
and hill
mm,
stream loaches. So I
mm.
do have that. But I think otherwise everything is for native fishes.
What about wild
Um,
discus? Do you have any?
no, I don't have any. So that was a long time in the past. I do still have Altams, but
Uh-huh.
that's it kind of a, at some point I used to have, native fishes in the, in our, dining room, right? Like a
Mm,
show
mm,
tank.
mm,
Um, so, but then it is not colorful enough. So eventually, I had marine for some time and now I have Altams in that tank.
okay.
So that's the only, I mean, that's the only large tank inside the house. I have a
Okay.
couple of other tanks inside the house which I use for photography. So any new
Mm,
fish which comes in, it
mm,
goes into that and then I can photograph, a little more comfortably because it's in
mm,
my, work room
mm, mm.
kind of thing. So that's the setup.
Awesome. It's been such a pleasure interacting with you and hearing from you. Uh, what is the one thing that you would want to kind of tell our audience, about Indian natives, about conservation? What is it in your mind that you want to kind of pass on?
I think we still don't have a great idea of what fishes are there in our neighborhood,
Hmm.
right? And we can't just leave it to scientists and the government to explore every nook and cranny, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think I mean if you have interest in nature, I would encourage all of you to encourage your neighborhood, probably like 100-kilometer radius of its. I mean, if you can travel, if you have that mobility, right? And see what fish exist there, because chances are there are fishes that are new to science, that people have never seen before, observed before, right? And also we'll get an idea of what is the health of our aquatic resources, right? So a healthy system will definitely have fishes, right? And if there are no fishes, we will know that there is something wrong with that
Yeah,
water,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think if people like I'm an enthusiast. I go and visit places, but I mean with the responsibility of a full-time job, family, and all that, there's only like very few days that I can dedicate to this. So there's no way that even if there are 10 people like me that we'll be able to cover.
mm,
the vast diversity of our country, right?
mm, mm,
So I would encourage that, wherever you are, try and do that exploration as long as it is, doesn't violate any local laws like, forest
mm,
and so on,
mm,
right?
mm, mm,
And see what is found there, right? And,
mm,
documented saying that this is found there, what
mm,
fish is found there. And you can send it to people like me who can ID it for you. And
mm,
if I'm not able to ID it, I can send it to ichthyologist. I have
mm,
quite a good set of friends who are, who work on fishes,
mm,
on a day-to-day basis, right?
mm,
So who
mm,
can, tell you whether it's a fish is new or not, right?
mm, mm.
So in that way, we'll have a good mapping of what is found in our country, right? And
Right.
we'll know that even if a fish goes missing, we'll at least know that there used to be a fish
Yeah.
that used to
Yeah.
exist here, right? I think that is very important because
Yeah.
the time is very short,
Mm,
because these are not visible like a lot of mammals.
mm.
You won't realize that there is a fish and now that fish is extinct if we don't
You
do
don't
that
even know.
mapping in the next
Yeah.
few years, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure the government also doesn't have that enough resources to do that mapping
Right.
of each and every place. I think
Right.
that's what I would encourage.
Mm,
Native fish keeping, it's a responsibility, is what I would say, because if
mm,
you're taking something from the wild,
mm,
there are domestically bred native fishes, but a vast majority is still from the wild. So if you have the resources to keep native fishes, do keep them. But there's no compulsion, so I don't go around say you have to keep native fish, right? But
mm,
if you
mm,
have the interest and if you think you can give them the right environment,
mm.
right, this is something that you can try as well, right? Trying to see what is their how is
Right.
their behavior, because that's another aspect that is not covered in a
Mm,
lot of scientific papers.
mm,
A scientific paper might say that the fish is found here, it looks like
mm,
this, it has so many spines,
mm.
things like that, but it might not
Yeah.
always
The
capture how
habitat.
does this fish breed, how
Yeah.
does this behave, is
Mm,
it a predator,
mm,
things like that might not be
mm,
easy to
mm,
document, right?
mm,
So that is
mm,
something that a hobbyist can contribute, right?
mm.
That's what you can contribute to the scientific community as well,
Right.
right?
Right.
That needs to work together.
Right. Awesome, and it's such a beautiful thought you've shared with us, Vita, and I'm sure this is going to encourage our viewers to reach out and go and explore their neighborhoods and see how they can contribute to this cause. I'm looking forward to many such discussions with you, Beta, in the future. Thank you so much for being over here and gracing, the weekend aquarist. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks for the opportunity because I have a captive audience to talk about native fishes and my love of my favorite fishes. So thanks for the opportunity as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.